Tonight, you carry heated stones to a funeral brazier 2,500 years ago, high in the Pamirs. Later chemistry will show that cannabis burned here. Your immediate problem is simpler. Careful ritual work at 3,050 meters, where even your fingers have decided grief should be handled indoors. If you genuinely enjoy quiet histories, subscribe or leave a gentle like. Tell us your part of the world and local time. Then dim the lights or turn on a fan. You are beside a circular grave mound at Jirzankal with one practical task: prepare the brazier without rushing. Dry earth and a pale, cold horizon frame the stone-ringed grave. Kneeling beside the mound, you steady a wooden brazier. Some sampled braziers were made from juniper, a wood that can smell aromatic when burned, though no surviving evidence tells us whether fragrance guided the choice. Several heated stones go into the wooden vessel one at a time. Their warmth reaches your palms through the rim, useful for a moment and uncomfortable soon after. You adjust the last stone until the brazier sits level beside the grave. From a small pouch, dried plant material falls across the hot stones. An earthy scent rises first, then a pale thread of smoke. The people nearest the brazier make room around it while you keep the vessel steady. You watch the pale stream cross the circle rather than belong to one person. A mourner on the far side steps closer. Another turns slightly away from the wind. Whatever each person expected from the right, the smoke occupied shared space around the grave. Black and white stones mark a narrow route between the circular mounds. You move the brazier only a few paces, watching your footing so the heated stones remain inside. Ceremony, like catering, becomes less dignified when the equipment tips over. This is Jirzankal Cemetery in the 1st millennium BCE, roughly 2,500 years before your own bedtime. The wood, stones and burned material will survive in fragments. For now they are ordinary objects being arranged by cold hands. At roughly 3,050 meters above sea level, a short outdoor task demands patience. Long winters and short summers shape the terrace, but your goal remains modest. Keep the stones hot, the vessel upright, and the gathering unhurried. Around you are the traces of a repeated practice. Much later, 10 wooden braziers containing burned stones will be recovered from 8 tombs here. One isolated fire might be chance. The same arrangement across several graves looks instead like recurring funeral work. Other braziers stand near other tombs, each built to hold heated stones rather than food or drink. The repeated form gives the gathering a practical rhythm. Prepare the vessel, add the material, let the smoke pass among those present. You are watching the third step of that sequence now, and it is the only one that leaves the ground. The stones stay where they were set. The wood keeps its shape. What moves is the smoke, and it moves through the space where the living are kneeling, which is why the sequence was arranged this way in the first place. What smoulders on the stones will leave cannabinol inside the braziers, a chemical marker of cannabis. The residue also points to plants with more psychoactive compounds than typical wild cannabis. Someone had obtained unusually potent material, whether by cultivation or careful selection. Either answer means somebody was paying attention. You cannot tell from here which it was, and neither can anyone kneeling beside you, because the knowledge lives in the hands of whoever prepared the plants rather than in anything said aloud tonight. You watch smoke pass between the mourners. No pipe or personal inhalation tool appears beside the grave. The brazier releases the plant into the space shared by everyone present. Hot stones release the plant without a pipe or personal vessel. The result hangs around the group, making the method visibly communal. The material record can show that arrangement. It cannot tell us that every mourner felt the same thing or gave the smoke the same meaning. You would not expect them to. Look along the row of faces turned toward the brazier, and you can see attention doing several different things at once. One person following the smoke, one watching the coals, one looking at nothing at all. The right holds all of that without requiring it to agree. Across the terrace, circular mounds and contrasting stones make the graves legible from a distance. Some tombs held more than one person. The landscape therefore gathers several kinds of closeness at once. Bodies within a tomb, mourners around a brazier, and smoke moving between them. That is the whole shape of it, and you are standing inside the third part. The smoke is the only element that crosses from one to another, which may be the point, or may simply be what smoke does. Nothing in the ground will ever settle which. The brazier is light enough to carry but awkward once filled. You grip it below the rim and cross a strip of uneven ground. Heat presses through the wood while the stones shift softly inside, so each step becomes deliberate. At the next grave, someone waits with more dried material while you settle the vessel. No speech survives from this moment. What remains is the sequence of work, repeated carefully enough to leave the same burned arrangement in several tombs. Wooden plates, bowls, and even angular harps were also placed in the cemetery. But this vessel carries scorch marks and heated stones. Its job is specific. Among many objects accompanying the dead, the brazier is the one arranged to make smoke. Everything else in the tomb was placed to be kept. This one object was placed to be used, and used up. You can tell the difference by looking at the inside of it. The burn is on the interior surface, in the place a fire would sit, and that is not something contamination does. One heated stone has rolled against the inner wall. You nudge it back with a piece of wood and expose the blackened surface beneath. A laboratory will one day read chemical traces from these burned interiors. You need only keep the heat distributed. You angle the brazier and see a dark trace gathering where plant meets heat. Much later, cannabinoids will appear on nearly every tested interior but not on the sampled exteriors. The contrast ties the residue to what burned inside the vessel, rather than to soil brushed across it afterward. You replace the pouch while the stones continue their work. The residue left here will differ from lower THC cannabis found at nearby Jai Cemetery. The comparison reveals no recipe, but it does make this funeral gathering's choice more particular. The scent strengthens on the faint breeze. Later chemical analysis will show cannabis with more psychoactive compounds than typical wild plants. That pattern suggests people either selected naturally potent plants or cultivated them, but researchers cannot tell which. You keep your attention on the stones and the slow release of smoke. The evidence establishes the material and method, not a complete account of what its users understood. The brazier has no elaborate mechanism. Wood contains a small bed of stones, heat does the rest. Its simplicity helps explain why the method is recoverable. Scorched interiors, burned stones, and trapped residue preserve each stage without preserving a single spoken instruction. So you learn the choreography and never the words. You can see the hands, the order, the equipment, and the point at which the smoke enters the gathering. What was said over it, if anything was said, went into the cold air with the smoke and stayed there. 3 sampled braziers were juniper. Because juniper can add its own aroma, fragrance may have influenced the choice. It may also have been available, durable, or familiar. The wood offers a possibility, not a proven rule of the ceremony. You lean nearer anyway, because that is what a person does when a fire changes its smell. Whatever the wood contributes arrives before the plant does, and by the time you have decided which of the two you are breathing, both have already gone past you into the dark. You return the scorched brazier to its place. Nearby, someone sets down a shallow wooden bowl, and an angular harp rests among the funeral objects. The equipment is ordinary enough to be handled, lifted, and arranged by real people. Smoke crosses between them, while the cold keeps everyone close to the mound. You step around a mound, holding someone who may have traveled far before burial. Much later, isotope work will class 24 of 34 tested people as local, and 10 as non-local. Only one non-local person is linked with a brazier tomb. The gathering included movement between communities, though its full guest list is gone. A final stone settles into place, while people stand around graves of both locals and travelers. The braziers do not cluster neatly with the newcomers, so no visiting stranger can be handed sole credit for the custom. You are left with a community that moved and exchanged ideas, not a tidy origin story. You set the brazier beside the mound and step back into the group. The practical work is complete. Heated stones, plant material, and smoke released around a funeral gathering. The reason each mourner gave that work remains private. Chemistry is excellent at identifying residue, and notably poor at interviewing the dead. A dark trace clings to the burned interior. Centuries later, careful laboratory analysis will identify cannabinol there. The pattern fits cannabis richer in psychoactive compounds than typical wild plants. The cooling vessel has preserved the unusual choice. It preserves it without knowing it is doing so. You set the vessel down at the end of an evening thinking about your knees and the cold, and the residue on its inside surface outlasts you, your language and the reason you were there. That is not a gift anyone intended to leave. Someone chose what went into your pouch, whether gathered or grown. The stronger material did not arrive on the stones by accident. As you close the pouch, the residue preserves that practical choice, but not the sensations or beliefs of those nearby. The plume thins as you stand with the others beside the grave. Whatever words were spoken here are gone. The vessel preserves the work instead. Stone heated, plant added, smoke released during a ceremony for the dead. You can follow those human actions without inventing a message for the smoke to carry. You lift the cooled brazier and step carefully between a circular mound and its stone ring. The arrangement changes how you move. There is a clear edge to respect and a narrow route back toward the group. From ground level, the cemetery is not an abstract plan, but a sequence of raised earth, placed stones, and working feet negotiating them in the cold. A strip of black and white stones runs beside your path. You follow it for several paces before setting the brazier down with the others. The contrasting stones remain vivid against muted ground, evidence of deliberate marking without revealing what every pattern meant. Your part of the ceremony ends in a practical gesture. Place the vessel securely, then leave the grave undisturbed. You return the pouch to the funeral equipment as the last visible trace disappears. Here, cannabis belongs securely to a mortuary context. Nothing around the grave proves leisure, medicine, or everyday use elsewhere. One well-preserved ceremony should not be promoted into an entire lifestyle merely because the headline enjoys itself. The crisp mountain air remains, but the active ritual has now faded into the quiet of the archaeological record. You observe the Jirzankal cemetery as it stands today, a landscape of silent, stone-ringed graves in the eastern Pamirs. This site, dating back about 2,500 years to the first millennium BCE, sits at roughly 3,050 meters above sea level on high terraces, a region known for its long, cold winters and brief summers. You approach one of the circular mounds, noticing the deliberate patterns of black and white stones that mark the resting places. Beneath these surface features, shaft chambers extend into the earth. Some are primary burials, holding a single individual, while others are secondary, suggesting a later placement, or perhaps multiple occupants within the same tomb. The size and complexity of these tombs vary, revealing the different ways the deceased were laid to rest within this ancient community. Each grave a quiet testament to enduring human practice. Your gaze follows the outline of a stone ring, observing how it defines the space above a burial. Some shaft chambers include a short passage, leading deeper into the earth, a structural detail that suggests the careful design of these ancient mortuary sites. The varying tomb sizes and numbers of occupants reflect diverse burial customs within the community, perhaps indicating different social statuses or family arrangements. Later, strontium isotope analysis of the individuals interred here revealed that 24 of 34 tested people were local to the Pamirs, their lives rooted in this high-altitude landscape. However, 10 individuals were non-local, indicating movement between communities, a subtle hint of ancient connections and migrations. A key finding was that only one of these non-local individuals was associated with a tomb containing a brazier, suggesting the cannabis ritual might have been a more localized practice, perhaps specific to the Pamir inhabitants. You shift your attention to the mortuary goods recovered from these tombs, now laid out for careful study. Before you are fragments of pottery, some suggesting vessels for daily use, others perhaps for ritual offerings. Beside them lie stone tools, worn smooth by ancient hands, evidence of practical crafts and survival in this high-altitude environment. You observe various wooden objects, not only the braziers, but also plates and bowls, perhaps used for offerings or communal meals to honor the departed. Angular harps are present too, their forms hinting at music or sound as part of the ceremonies. Preserved wool textiles suggest clothing or shrouds, providing warmth in a region known for long, harsh winters. Copper objects and ironware show early metalworking skills, while small, colorful glass beads catch the light, delicate adornments for the deceased. Crucially, among all these finds, there is no evidence of hemp textiles, a detail that helps clarify the purpose of cannabis at Jirzankal. The absence of hemp textiles among the other finds is a significant detail, indicating that the cannabis used in the braziers was valued for its psychoactive properties, not for fiber production. This distinction is crucial for understanding the ritual's intent. These diverse goods, from practical stone tools to delicate glass beads, were carefully placed with the deceased, each object holding a practical or symbolic role within the mortuary rite. The wooden plates and bowls, in particular, suggest a continuation of earthly practices, perhaps for offerings or communal meals, even in the context of burial. Interestingly, while most sampled wooden objects were birch, 3 of the 4 sampled braziers were made from juniper wood. Juniper gives off an aromatic smoke when burned, a possibility the researchers consider for purposeful wood selection, though it is not a proven ritual rule. This collection reveals a society that honored its deceased with a range of materials, each chosen for a specific purpose. You can feel the logic of it from where you are kneeling, even without knowing the categories. Nothing here is general purpose. The stones are for the shape, the wood is for the heat, the plant is for the smoke, and your own part is to keep all 3 from interfering with each other. Your attention now settles on the wooden braziers themselves, the central objects of the cannabis ritual. 10 of these braziers were recovered, along with 4 burnt stones, from 8 different tombs across the cemetery. You carefully pick up a fragment of a brazier, feeling the smooth, preserved wood on its exterior, perhaps birch or juniper. Then, you turn it over, examining the interior surface. Here, the wood is distinctly charred and darkened, an undeniable sign of intense heat and burning. You observe the subtle difference. The exterior remains clean, untouched by direct flames or residues, while the interior bears the indelible marks of its purpose. This stark contrast between the charred inner surfaces and the clean exteriors provided a natural control for later chemical analysis, ensuring that any detected residues truly came from the burning within the vessel, not from accidental surface contamination. You gently set the fragment down, the ancient wood cool against your fingertips, a quiet testament to its journey through time. This clear distinction, the stark contrast between the charred interior and the untouched exterior, was not merely an observation, it was fundamental to the scientific inquiry. The clean outer surface served as a critical control, a silent assurance against any accidental surface contamination. This meant that any chemical traces found deep within the charred layers could be confidently attributed to the purposeful burning that occurred inside the brazier itself. The integrity of these objects, preserved in the thin, dry air of the high Pamir terraces, became the bedrock of the evidence. It was this specific material, the wood that had directly embraced the flames and held the smoke, that would later travel to a laboratory, prepared to yield its chemical secrets, revealing the precise nature of the ancient ritual. The smoke has a smell you would know anywhere. It is sharper than juniper and heavier than wood smoke, and it settles into wool and hair and stays there for days. You do not have a word for the compound making it, and you do not need one. What you have is the knowledge that this particular plant, prepared this particular way, belongs in this place at this hour, and that everyone kneeling around the brazier learnt that from someone older. Much later, people will take fragments of these braziers and identify what burned in them, and their answer will be cannabis, established carefully enough that nobody has to guess. But that is a room a long way from here, with different light. Beside the grave, the work is physical. You shield the coals with a cupped hand when the wind turns. Feel the heat push back against your palm, and wait for the moment the smoke thickens rather than thins. Someone across from you shifts a stone half a finger's width with the edge of a boot, closing a gap you had not noticed. The fire steadies. Nobody comments on it. The smoke rises in a single slow column into the cold air above the stones, and the people around it stay exactly where they are while it does what it was lit to do. What was in it, when it was finally identified, turned out to be stronger than the cannabis growing wild in the valleys below. That is the one detail worth carrying out of a laboratory and back to this hillside. Not the method, but the fact that this was chosen, and chosen for a reason. Here, at the graveside, choice looks like preparation. The plants did not arrive by accident. Somebody gathered them, somebody dried them, and somebody decided how much would be needed for a night this cold and a gathering this size. You were not consulted on any of it, and would not have expected to be. The judgment belongs to people who have done this before, and the whole arrangement runs on their having done it before. You breathe shallowly without meaning to. The air near the brazier is thick enough to notice, and the cold above it is sharp enough that you feel the boundary between the two on your face. The stones ringing the grave hold the heat a little, and the ground beyond them does not. Your knees have found the one position that will last. Beside you, an older mourner has not moved in some minutes, and their stillness is not grief exactly. It is attention, held steady, the way you would hold a full vessel you did not want to spill. Beyond simply identifying cannabis, the specific chemical pattern found in the Jirzankal braziers proved particularly informative about the plant's properties. When these residues were compared to cannabis remains from the nearby GI cemetery, which exhibited lower levels of psychoactive compounds, the Jirzankal findings indicated a plant with distinctly higher potency. This intriguing observation immediately raises a quiet, compelling question. Why did the people of Jirzankal use this particular, more potent form of cannabis? You consider the possibilities, allowing them to gently unfold. Was this plant deliberately cultivated for its elevated psychoactive compounds, perhaps through careful selection of specific seeds or specialized growing techniques? Or could the mourners of Jirzankal have simply selected naturally potent plants from the rugged mountain region, identifying and choosing those wild varieties that produced a more significant effect? Another environmental factor also exists. Could the harsh, high-altitude conditions of the Pamirs have naturally stressed the cannabis plants, leading them to produce a higher concentration of these compounds as a survival mechanism? These quiet questions continue to linger, as the archaeological evidence alone cannot definitively provide a singular answer. Researchers acknowledge they could not determine with certainty whether the people of Jirzankal actively cultivated high-potency cannabis, carefully nurturing it for its specific effects, or if they simply sought out and selected the most potent wild varieties, thriving in their challenging, high-altitude landscape. The precise cause of this elevated potency remains an open scientific inquiry, a quiet mystery still held within the ancient smoke and the earth. However, what is undeniably clear from the chemical signature is the consistent pattern of higher psychoactive compounds. This pattern strongly points to a deliberate and intentional choice in the selection of the plant material. It distinguishes the cannabis used at Jirzankal from lower potency varieties, indicating a purposeful decision for a plant with specific, elevated psychoactive properties. This was not a casual choice. It was a chosen plant, used for a specific, ritualistic purpose. Chosen is the word that does the work. You are not watching people use whatever grew nearest the path. You are watching the end of a decision made somewhere upstream of tonight by someone who knew the difference between one plant and another and cared which one ended up on these coals. The Jirzankal cemetery reveals a community connected to a wider world. Chemical analysis of ancient bones, using isotope evidence, showed that 24 of 34 tested individuals were local to the Pamirs, having lived their lives there. However, 10 others were identified as non-local, indicating movement between communities, perhaps through trade or migration. This finding prompts a quiet question about the ritual. Did these non-local individuals introduce the practice of cannabis burning, or did they adopt it upon arrival? A specific detail offers a clue. Only one of these 10 non-local individuals was found in a tomb containing a brazier. This suggests that while people certainly moved across the landscape, the ritual use of cannabis with braziers was likely a more localized tradition, rather than one universally carried by every traveler. You carefully set a brazier fragment down, the smooth exterior cool beneath your fingers, contemplating the subtle patterns of ancient human connection. The scarcity of braziers associated with non-local individuals implies that this mortuary ritual, though observed within a mobile society, was likely a local tradition. It was not universally adopted by all who arrived from elsewhere. The strontium analysis confirmed that some buried individuals were indeed not from the immediate area, revealing a dynamic ancient society where people moved between communities. Yet, the research paper carefully notes the cannabis burning is possibly local, avoiding any overstatement of the evidence. The presence of non-local individuals does not automatically link them to this specific ritual. Instead, it highlights the complex interplay of human movement and cultural practice, a subtlety that chemical evidence alone cannot fully untangle. You pause, letting this distinction settle, then turn your attention to another aspect of the braziers themselves, still cool on the table. Among the wooden objects recovered from Jirzankal, which included plates, bowls, and even angular harps, a specific detail emerged concerning the braziers. Most sampled wooden objects were birch, a common local wood. However, 3 of the 4 sampled juniper objects were specifically braziers. Juniper wood, when burned, releases a distinct aromatic smoke. You consider this scent mingling with the rising cannabis smoke, adding a subtle layer of fragrance to the ritual. Was this a deliberate choice? Did mourners select juniper for its aromatic potential, believing its scent contributed meaningfully to the ceremony? The research paper acknowledges this purposeful wood selection as a possibility, a subtle consideration rather than a proven rule. It hints at intention beyond mere utility. You pick up a small piece of juniper wood, feeling its rough texture, imagining the subtle scent it would release into the crisp mountain air. Though juniper gives off an aromatic smoke when burned, the research carefully presents this as a possible purposeful selection, not a definitive ritual rule. The evidence does not establish what mourners believed the smoke accomplished, or if the juniper's aroma was considered essential. This remains a quiet uncertainty, a detail inviting contemplation rather than a firm conclusion. Perhaps the choice was for availability, its burning properties, or indeed, its fragrance. The archaeological record precisely tells us what was used, where, and how. Yet, the subjective reasons, the beliefs and sensory experiences, often remain just beyond its reach. This boundary defines our understanding of the past, knowing what is certain and acknowledging what remains an intriguing question. You set the juniper piece back down, the scent of the ancient past a faint, imagined whisper, as the quiet settles. The title promise now has a firm answer. At Jirzankal, people deliberately burned unusually potent cannabis on hot stones inside wooden braziers during funeral ceremonies. The smoke was produced around a group, not through a personal device. Selection or cultivation is plausible. The mourners' precise beliefs are not recoverable. The objects tell us what they did, and stop honestly at why. You may find that a relief rather than a frustration. Nobody is going to put words in these mourners' mouths on the strength of a burned vessel. What you can say is what you have seen: a fire built carefully, a plant chosen deliberately, and a group of people standing in its smoke in the cold, together, for as long as it lasted. When the ceremony is done, the dark residue remains inside the brazier while the outer wood stays comparatively clean. That small difference will matter centuries later. For now, you only feel the vessel cooling as it rests beside the mound. The group begins to turn away from the grave. One person lifts a wooden bowl. Another checks the harp before taking the narrow path between the stones. You remain for a moment beside the cooling brazier as the shared space around it slowly empties. You let the last smoke pass without asking it for a confession. The firm answer is enough. Unusually potent cannabis was burned on heated stones in wooden braziers during funeral ceremonies. The human meaning remains with the mourners as you leave the cooling vessel behind. The cooled braziers remain beside the mounds while the group begins to leave. You take the narrow path between black and white stones, carrying no new question with you. Behind, the equipment of the ceremony rests where its work ended. Ahead, the mountain air gives way to a warmer room and another ordinary task. The high Pamir terraces recede, and a new scene gently unfolds. Here, the air is warm and still, carrying the scent of grain and a subtle, yeasty tang. You observe an ancient Egyptian workshop, a place of steady, purposeful activity. In the center, a baker works diligently, his hands deep in a tall tub of dough, forearms dusted with flour as he kneads the heavy mass. Nearby, women grind grain with stone querns, their movements precise and unhurried, the rhythmic scrape of stone on stone echoing softly. As a quiet observer, you watch the women at the grinding stones lean into their task, their faces intent, converting crushed grain into fine flour. Their movements are a constant, rhythmic motion under the warm Egyptian sun. The baker works with powerful, economical pushes and folds, his muscles engaged in the heavy dough. This foundational labor sets the pace, ensuring the production of the day's essential bread and beer for a Middle Kingdom Egyptian household. Bread and beer are being made in one connected workshop. A model placed in Mekata's Middle Kingdom tomb preserves this arrangement in miniature. Grain workers, dough, vats, ovens and jars sharing the same busy floor. Similar ingredients are about to take two different routes. You can watch both from where you are standing without moving your feet. The grain that goes to the oven becomes something you eat with your hands the same day. The grain that goes to the vat becomes something you drink several days later, after it has been left alone to change. One route ends in heat and one ends in patience. A basket of crushed grain reaches the women at the querns. Flour is swept toward the bakery, while another portion moves toward the brewing vat. Nothing is wasted, and nobody pauses to admire the efficiency, which is usually how one recognizes a genuinely efficient workplace. Nobody in the room is hurrying, and nobody is idle, and you will notice you have stopped being able to tell where one person's job ends. A vessel is set down where the next pair of hands will need it. That is not politeness. It is a room that has been arranged by people who work in it. On the brewing side, a heavy pestle breaks the grain with a steady thud. Two women grind it finer on stone querns. Another worker gathers the flour, works it into dough-like lumps, and carries them toward the tall vat where water will begin the mash. You follow the load with your eyes because it is the heaviest thing anyone has lifted so far. The vat is the tallest object in the room, and everything about the way it is approached tells you it does not get moved. The work comes to the vat stays where it is. Water enters the tall vat, followed by the prepared lumps. A worker leans into a long stirring tool and turns the thick mixture from the bottom. The mash will move next into tall crocks to ferment, but first it has to stop behaving like wet masonry. You would find it heavier than it looks. The paddle does not slide through it so much as push, and you can see the resistance in the shoulders of whoever is doing the pushing. This is the least dignified stage of a drink that will be handed round with some ceremony later on. Fermenting liquid is poured from the tall crocks into round jugs. The weight shifts suddenly as each vessel fills, so 2 practiced hands matter more than ceremony. Black clay stoppers seal the jugs before they are carried aside to finish their transformation. After the seal goes on, nobody can do anything else to them, and you can feel the room relax very slightly about those particular jars. They have been handed over to time. Whatever happens inside them now happens without supervision, in a corner. Over days nobody will spend watching. On the bakery side, one worker tips emmer flour into a tall tub, while another adds water. They press the thick dough with both hands, divide it, and shape flat cakes beside taller conical loaves. At the black ovens, a baker rakes the wood fire with a long poker and makes room for the next batch. You feel the heat arrive on your face when the oven is opened and leave again when it is closed, and that pulse is the clock the whole room runs on. Nothing in the bakery is timed by anything you would call a measurement. It is timed by how the fire looks and how the last batch came out. The shared workshop now makes practical sense. Grain is crushed once, then divided. One root ends at the oven and the other at sealed jars. Mercator's model is not a recording of one named workday, but its linked stations preserve how the 2 staples could be produced together. Together is the detail worth keeping. You are not looking at a bakery beside a brewery. You are looking at one room where the same grain, the same water, the same fire, and largely the same hands produce both, because separating them would mean doing several things twice. You look down at a workshop made small enough for a tomb. Its workers keep grinding, kneading, baking and brewing forever without once requesting a lunch break. Flat and conical loaves stand beside thick, cloudy beer, ordinary provisions imagined as necessary even beyond death. A shaped loaf sticks briefly to the baker's palm. He dusts it with flour, sets it beside the others, and uses the long poker to clear a place in the hot oven. The next loaf goes in cleanly. Across the room, a sealed beer jug is carried to storage. You watch it go, and that is the last you will see of it. Storage is a wall, a shaded corner, a place chosen for being dull. Nothing about the journey of that jar is interesting, which is exactly what its contents require of the next several days. The workshop's output travels beyond the meal. In a society without coin or paper notes, bread and beer rations could reward labor. A loaf or jug leaving this room might feed a household worker and also account for the work that person had done. So the loaf in front of you is 2 things at once, and you cannot separate them by looking. It is a meal, and it is a record. Somebody's day has been converted into something you can hold, count, carry, and hand over, which is a strange thing to notice about bread. A worker counts finished loaves while sealed jugs collect beside the wall. Food and payment are not separate abstractions here. Both can be lifted, carried, divided, and consumed. The day's grain has become a practical way to distribute the value of land and labor. You will not find a coin anywhere in this room. What you will find is grain in several stages of becoming something else. And the whole arrangement works because everybody agrees on roughly what a loaf and a jar are worth in a day's work. That agreement is the machinery. The quern is just the noisy part. The last thick beer reaches a round jug and receives its black clay stopper. Beside it, bread comes from the oven in recognizable flat and conical forms. The 2 products are ready to nourish the household, be stored, or leave as rations. 3 destinations, and you cannot tell by looking at a loaf which one it is headed for. The decision happens later, and elsewhere, by someone counting. Here the only distinction that matters is whether a thing is finished, and finished is something you can see. You stop beside miniature grain stores, cattle keepers, and butchers from the same tomb. The figures extend the workshop into a whole chain of provision. Near the departed, the makers placed not only finished food but the workers and tools imagined to keep producing it. As the day's work in the bakery and brewery drew to a close, a comforting blend of aromas settled over the household. The warm scent of baking bread mingled with the subtle tang of fermenting beer, filling the air with a quiet promise of nourishment. This glimpse into daily sustenance comes from a unique record, a hidden chamber within the tomb of Mekata, dating to the early Middle Kingdom, around 1981 to 1975 BCE. In 1920, after the tomb's accessible rooms had long been plundered by ancient thieves, archaeologists cleared debris from the site, revealing a secret. There, untouched and preserved from time, lay 24 meticulously crafted wooden models. These were not mere toys, but detailed miniature worlds, including a combined bakery and brewery workshop, offering an unparalleled window into the routines of the past. You now observe the moment of this quiet, remarkable discovery. A scene frozen in time, undisturbed in their hidden chamber. The models offered a vivid tableau of Middle Kingdom life, frozen in time, while the main tomb had been plundered in antiquity. This secret cache remained intact, a testament to careful concealment. The discovery of these 24 well-preserved models in 1920 was a quiet triumph, offering a level of detail about daily activities few other archaeological finds could match. The bakery and brewery model, a miniature complex in itself, provided a tangible representation of essential sustenance for the afterlife. This unexpected preservation allowed us to observe the intricate processes of ancient Egyptian food production, not as abstract concepts or simple lists, but as a series of coordinated human actions. Each tiny figure, each tool, each vat contributes to a silent narrative of daily work. We can now step closer to this miniature world to trace the flow of grain and labor. Trace it forward from where you are, and it goes one way only. From the heaviest work to the lightest, from grinding to shaping to waiting. Nothing in the room ever moves backward. Grain does not become grain again once it has been ground, which is why the order of the stations is not a matter of taste. Stepping closer to the model, you observe the workshop's careful arrangement. It is not a single open space, but a complex with separate rooms. A screened main doorway leads into the brewery. Just inside, a small figure of a guard sits holding a baton, overseeing the entrance. This detail reveals a structured environment, even in miniature, where order was maintained over valuable provisions. Beyond him, the brewery room unfolds. The process begins with a man diligently crushing grain with a heavy pestle, a rhythmic, foundational task that sets the pace. Nearby, two women are bent over stone querns, grinding the crushed grain into fine flour, their movements precise and practiced. Their miniature efforts suggest a focused, coordinated dance of labor, each action contributing to the day's essential output. The coordinated effort within the brewery model continues. The flour, once ground, is gathered by another figure, who works it into dough-like lumps. These lumps are not destined for bread, but specifically for the beer mash, a crucial distinction in the process. The sequence is clear, from raw grain to crushed particles, then to fine flour, and finally to these prepared lumps, each step a progression toward the final product. The model depicts a unified task, where each worker's effort contributes to the whole, a silent choreography of production. This careful representation shows how the foundational ingredients for both bread and beer were prepared in a shared, efficient manner, highlighting the interconnectedness of these two essential staples in the ancient Egyptian diet. The steady, purposeful work of a Middle Kingdom day is conveyed through their miniature, still forms, revealing the skill embedded in these ancient routines. You would be slower at all of it. That is worth admitting while you watch. Each of these motions has been done enough times that the body has stopped consulting anyone about it, and the result looks like ease from a distance and like accumulated work up close. Within the brewery model, the process continues with deliberate steps. Water is added to the dough-like lumps, transforming them into a thick, coarse mash. In a tall, cylindrical vat, a figure performs the strenuous task of treading the mash by foot. This physical work is essential, ensuring the ingredients are thoroughly mixed and the proper consistency is achieved for optimal fermentation. The rhythmic motion of treading, a foundational part of the brewing process, highlights the demanding nature of daily production. From this large vat, the newly prepared liquid is carefully transferred to a series of 4 tall crocks. These vessels will now hold the fermenting beer, beginning its slow, quiet transformation. Each step, from the initial mixing to the start of fermentation, is depicted with clarity, showing the progression of the beer-making cycle within this busy workshop. A testament to ancient Egyptian ingenuity. Ingenuity is a large word for a small arrangement, and you may prefer the smaller version. Somebody worked out where to stand. The stations are close enough that a load never has to be carried far and far enough apart that 2 people are not reaching into the same space at once. Once fermentation is complete within the tall crocks, the finished beer liquid, thick and cloudy, is carefully poured into round jugs. These jugs are then sealed with black clay stoppers, a final, precise act that preserves the beer for storage and consumption. These sealed vessels stand ready, marking the culmination of the brewery's diligent efforts. This entire workshop, with its separate yet interconnected rooms for brewing and baking, represents an integrated approach to food production, where efficiency and careful management were paramount. A guard, holding a baton, sits near the screened main doorway, his presence a quiet reminder of the value of these provisions. They were not merely sustenance, but vital commodities within the household, central to daily life and even payment. The model highlights the careful organization of Middle Kingdom Egyptian life, ensuring a steady supply of essential staples for all. The brewery's work is now complete, preparing the way for the next essential task. You notice the pause before it starts, which is short and not restful. A surface gets wiped, a vessel gets moved out of the path, and the room resets itself to the position it needs to be in for the thing that happens next. Then it happens next. Moving past the guard and through the screened doorway, your gaze now shifts to the adjacent section of the workshop, the bakery. Here, the transformation of grain continues, but with a different, equally essential end product. You observe tall tubs, similar in form to those in the brewery, but now filled with the fine flour and water, where dough is being mixed. Hands work the mixture with a practiced, rhythmic motion, kneading the basic ingredients into the foundational food of Egypt. This bread, primarily made from emmer wheat, was a daily necessity. The bakery itself is laid out in 2 distinct compartments, each designed for a specific part of the bread-making journey. This thoughtful separation, yet close proximity, reveals a highly organized system for providing the staples of life. The steady, purposeful work within this space promises fresh, warm bread for the household. Within the bakery's compartments, activity is constant and coordinated. You observe 2 black ovens, tended by figures with long pokers. These ovens are central to the bread-making process, where shaped dough transforms under the steady heat. Nearby, baskets hold conical loaves, already baked and stacked, their forms uniform and ready for distribution. Other workers shape cakes in various forms, showing the diversity of baked goods produced alongside the staple bread. Circular stoves are also visible, perhaps for specific cooking or different baking needs within the workshop. This cycle of mixing, shaping and baking ensures the household is supplied, reflecting the steady, often strenuous, effort required to provide staples in Middle Kingdom Egypt. Beyond daily sustenance, bread and beer held a deeper and more profound significance in Middle Kingdom Egypt. They functioned as a fundamental form of currency, a tangible measure of value in a society that did not use coin or paper money. Food rations, consisting of these essential staples, often served as direct payment for workers and household staff, a clear exchange for their labor. For instance, soldiers stationed at Nubian forts received inscribed loaf-shaped wooden tokens, each precisely specifying their bread rations for a 10-day period. These tokens represented their livelihood, a concrete guarantee of daily needs met, linking their service directly to their provision. This practical system demonstrates how deeply integrated these staples were into the economic and social fabric of the time. extending their importance far beyond the dinner table and into the very structure of society. It was a practical system that sustained individuals and the state, both at once, which you can hold in mind without much strain from inside a warm room that smells of bread. The state is a long way off tonight. What is in front of you is a quern, an oven, a vat, and enough finished food to get a household to tomorrow, which is the only unit of time the room has any opinion about. The importance of bread and beer extended even into the afterlife. For the people of Middle Kingdom Egypt, sustenance was imagined as necessary for the journey beyond. Three-dimensional tomb models, such as the one you have been observing, were created precisely to ensure the deceased's continued provision in the next world. These models, depicting essential activities like baking and brewing, offered a symbolic guarantee of sustenance for eternity. Beyond the models, actual food and drink offerings were carefully placed on ritual tables or directly within tombs. Provisions could also be represented in images and listed in funerary texts, each method designed to secure nourishment for eternity. The belief was that the gods and the dead consumed these offerings symbolically, drawing their spiritual essence. This symbolic act then allowed the actual provisions to be distributed to priests and other mortuary cult workers, connecting the spiritual realm with the practical needs of the living. This intricate system of belief and practice shows bread and beer as the nutritional backbone and cultural cornerstone of Middle Kingdom Egypt, essential for life, for work, and for the long journey beyond. The quiet hum of the workshop fades, and the comforting scent of baking bread softens as the scene gently shifts. The worker places a conical loaf with the finished bread while another vessel is prepared for beer. In Nikita's tomb model, bakery and brewery share one workshop because the same grain can travel toward two staples. The linked process is now visible in the objects before you. Flour and dough on one side, mash and jars on the other. A loaf and a jug leave the work area as ordinary provisions. Emmer bread and thick, cloudy beer supplied much of the Middle Kingdom diet. The morning's pestle, quern, tub, oven and vat have become food and drink that can actually sustain a household. You can see the whole conversion at a glance now, and there is nothing mysterious left in it. Grain, water, heat, time. What went in was a raw material nobody could eat, and what came out is two things a person can live on. That is the entire achievement, and it took all day. You watch a sealed jug leave with a worker rather than join the household meal. Bread and beer rations could pay labourers and staff in a society without coin or paper notes. The vessel is nourishment, wages or both. Once the day's shares are accounted for, the quern can stop. As the day's work in the bakery and brewery drew to a close, a comforting blend of aromas settled over the household. The warm scent of baking bread, lingering from the beehive ovens, mingled with the subtle tang of fermenting beer from the sealed jugs. These scents filled the air, a quiet promise of the day's nourishment, and a reassuring rhythm of life in ancient Egypt. You leave the warmth of it behind more reluctantly than you left the mountain. The oven will be raked again tomorrow, and the jars in the corner will keep changing quietly whether anyone thinks about them or not. For now the room is going dark in the ordinary way, one task at a time. The bakery's warm bread and fermenting beer recede with the workshop evening. Centuries later, another small necessity waits in a modest Roman home as daylight leaves the room. A woman reaches for a terracotta oil lamp that fits in one hand. You remain a quiet presence while she checks its reservoir and brings it toward the last cooking ember, preparing enough light for one nearby task. Soot circles the nozzle, and a greasy shine marks the places most often handled. She turns the lamp, checks its small reservoir, and wipes the rim with a scrap of cloth. This is a working object, expected to earn its place on the table every evening. You would not look twice at it in a market. It is small enough to close your hand around, plain enough that its decoration is a formality, and cheap enough that losing one would be an annoyance rather than a loss. That is precisely the class of object that gets used every single night. A tear in a tunic still needs mending before rest. Daylight has nearly left the room, so the palm-sized lamp has one clear assignment. Put enough light on cloth and needle for the seam to be closed. Enough is the operative word, and you can see how little enough turns out to be. Not a lit room, not a lit table, a pool of light roughly the size of 2 hands, positioned where the work is, with the rest of the evening left dark because the rest of the evening does not need seeing. She carries the unlit lamp to a low table. Its compact body fits one hand, leaving the other free for cloth, oil, or a door latch. Portability is the useful trick. Rather than lighting the entire room, she can move a small pool of light to the task, which reverses the arrangement you are used to. You would light a room and then work anywhere in it. She lights a task and carries it, and the room is only ever illuminated in the one place something is happening. Everything else stays where the dark left it. Oil from a small earthenware flask enters the reservoir. She trims the wick with a pointed tool, removing the charred end that would smoke too much. The maintenance takes less time than the mending, but without it the room gains soot rather than useful light, so the trimming is not tidiness. You would learn that within one evening of getting it wrong. A wick left too long gives you a taller flame, a darker ceiling, and no more light to sew by than you had before. The small maintenance is the difference between a lamp and a smoking dish of oil. The trimmed wick catches, light reaches the table and little beyond it, which is enough. She carries the lamp to a low stool, sets it just left of the cloth, and turns the torn edge until both sides of the seam are visible. You would do the same thing and would not think of it as skill. The light cannot be moved much, so the cloth moves instead, and it keeps moving all evening in small corrections that put the next inch of work where the flame already is. Settled on the stool, she threads the needle and brings the torn edge near the flame, though not near enough to scorch it. The modest light is sufficient. Her fingers begin a line of small, even stitches. They are close together and the same length, and they go in without hesitation because her hands have made this seam before on other cloth. The needle catches the light each time it turns over. Nothing about the pace suggests she is trying to finish before the oil does. The needle catches the lamp's small pool of light, then disappears into the cloth. She turns the fabric rather than moving the flame, keeping both hands inside the brightest patch. A few more stitches close the worn edge. The lamp has already done what she asked of it, made one close task possible after sunset. That is the whole of what was asked. The flame has not lit the room, warmed it, or marked the hour. It has held still in one place long enough for a needle to be threaded and a tear to be closed, and it will be put out when that is done. She rubs a thumb across the greasy handle and leaves the soot at the nozzle alone. Many surviving lamps carry the same signs of repeated use. In her hands the wear is easy to explain. Carry, refill, light, and place the flame beside whatever the evening still requires. Tonight it requires very little. A seam, a cloth folded and set aside, a lamp moved a hand's width closer to the edge of the table. The requirements of the evening are shrinking as the evening goes on, which is the ordinary direction for them to move. The flame does not conquer the room. It reveals a needle, 2 hands, and a narrow strip of cloth while the walls remain dim. That limited reach-shaped evening work. Bring the object close, finish one precise task, then carry the light elsewhere if needed. It is not needed elsewhere. The lamp stays where it was set, and the pool of light stays the same size it has been all evening, resting on cloth and hands and a small area of table that has nothing else on it. Across Roman households, the same solution could follow many different hands, oil, wick, molded clay, and a flame placed near the work. This woman's room needs no grand illumination. Another 3 stitches, and the torn edge begins to hold. The 2 sides no longer pull apart when the cloth is lifted. She turns it once to look at the line from the other face, finds it acceptable, and turns it back. The remaining work is a few more stitches and a knot, and there is enough oil for both. While turning the cloth, she notices the lamp's faint moulded mark. A potter pressed it into the clay before the object reached a stool. and then this room. The nearly worn pattern records several ordinary hands, the potter's, the seller's, and now hers. None of them left a name. What they left is a shape that fits a palm, a surface worn where a thumb goes, and a rim darkened by use. And the record is the wear itself, rather than anything written on it. The worn design might once have shown a god, an animal, an everyday scene, or a workshop mark like those on other Roman lamps. She cannot read it in this light, and does not need to. The familiar weight and steady wick matter more than the decoration. She could not describe the decoration without looking. She could describe the weight exactly, and the place where the oil sits highest, and how long the flame lasts once it has settled. Those are the properties an object acquires by being used rather than by being made. The Roman room is ready to become dark again whenever she chooses, the small lamp having completed its task. Its work was small and complete, extending the evening for one mended seam. The story of Roman light, however, reaches far beyond one quiet home. Imagine then a second lamp, one that saw countless evenings in a different setting, the ancient port of Naucratis, nestled in the Nile Delta. This object is a mold-made ceramic oil lamp, dating broadly from the late 1st to 4th centuries CE. It is a sturdy, practical piece, designed not for luxury, but for everyday use. Its very shape suggests a life of constant service. A hand might reach for it, feeling the smooth, cool weight of its fired clay, a familiar presence in the quiet moments after sunset. This lamp, unlike the first, carries the tangible marks of a busy world, ready to illuminate another small corner of the past. This lamp from Naucratis, now observed closely, tells a clear story of practical daily use. Both of its nozzles carry distinct traces of burning, dark smudges of soot that have accumulated over countless evenings. These marks indicate the lamp was lit repeatedly, providing light in a busy port town. The base and upper surface of the lamp also show distinct wear from use, a subtle smoothing of the coarse clay where fingers repeatedly gripped it, where it was set down on rough surfaces and picked up again. This wear is not from display, but from the constant rhythm of its working life. Part of its handle is missing, a small break that hints at accidental damage during its long history, or simply the attrition of time and regular handling. These are not the signs of a treasured display piece, but of a robust tool, a constant companion in the rhythm of Roman nights, always ready to be lit for another task. Turning the small lamp in hand, one can observe its very substance, revealing its origins. The clay itself is coarse, a distinctive brown-orange Nile silt, clearly sourced from the fertile riverbanks that defined so much of daily life in the delta, even under Roman rule. Mixed within this clay are visible inclusions of sand and lime, giving the lamp an earthy, slightly rough texture. This tangible connection to the local landscape emphasizes its common, practical nature. This isn't a refined, delicate ceramic crafted for display in an elite home, but a robust material, chosen for its ready availability and its ability to withstand the heat of a burning wick. The presence of these local materials, shaped by familiar techniques, points to a craft rooted in the immediate environment, producing a common object from common earth, yet essential for Roman evenings. Over this coarse brown-orange body, a red-orange slip has been carefully applied. This thin coating gives the lamp a slightly smoother finish and a more uniform color, enhancing its appearance without being overly ornate. Crucially, this slip was not merely decorative, it served a practical purpose. It would have helped to seal the porous clay, making the lamp more efficient at holding its precious oil, preventing it from seeping away too quickly. This small detail suggests the potter's understanding of their craft, balancing the need for practicality with a touch of aesthetic consideration for an everyday object. The lamp feels solid and dependable in the hand, clearly designed to be a workhorse in the darkness. Its simple yet effective finish reflecting its functional role in Roman homes. As the small lamp settles in your palm, its design reveals a series of practical choices, each made with its purpose in mind. It is not a grand, ornate object, but a tool carefully shaped for utility. Notice the two distinct nozzles, positioned to allow for a broader spread of light than a single wick could provide. This dual illumination would have been particularly useful for illuminating a larger area within a modest Roman room, or for focusing more intently on a specific evening task, such as mending a garment or preparing a simple meal. At its center, a clear opening serves as the oil reservoir, thoughtfully designed for easy and routine refilling. Around this aperture, a simple ring of relief dots offers a subtle decorative touch, almost an afterthought on an otherwise purely functional form. Two small, acorn-shaped ornaments flank the design, adding to this understated aesthetic. The handle, though now partly missing, once displayed a fan pattern, and underneath the base, a distinct lozenge-shaped relief is identified as a maker's mark, a quiet signature from the artisan who shaped this very clay in Naucratis, a port city in the Nile Delta. This small lozenge on the base, the maker's mark, serves as a quiet confirmation of the lamp's origin in Naucratis and its mold-made form. Such marks were not unique to this lamp. They were common on Roman lamps, indicating a standardized production process. This suggests that these lamps were reliably manufactured in workshops, not as one-off creations, but as readily available items for trade across the Roman world. The presence of such a mark on an everyday object like this lamp speaks to an organized system of manufacturing and commerce, ensuring that even common necessities were produced with a consistent quality and distributed efficiently. This standardization made these lamps accessible to ordinary people, not just the wealthy. The lamp's twin nozzles, as observed, provided a distinct practical advantage, offering a more distributed and effective light, while the central oil reservoir simplified the quick routine refilling, a consistent and necessary core in any Roman household after sunset. Now, turn the lamp over in your hand, letting your fingers trace its surface, feeling the familiar weight of the coarse Nile silt clay. The evidence of its long and active life is clear and tangible. Darkened soot stains vividly surround both nozzles, showing that both wicks were regularly lit, night after night, through countless evenings. These dark traces are a record of the lamp's consistent service, its twin flames diligently pushing back the encroaching darkness for tasks that often stretched long beyond sunset. The robust clay itself bears the marks of time and hands. Noticeable wear appears on both its base, where it rested on countless surfaces, and its upper surface, smoothed and subtly polished in places from repeated handling. It was picked up, carried and set down, fully integrated into the daily rhythms of a Roman household. Part of its handle is now missing, a small, unremarkable break, a quiet sign of constant use over many years. Yet this damage did not diminish the lamp's primary function. Indeed, the missing handle did not render the lamp useless or lead to its discard. It simply changed how it was held, a minor adaptation absorbed seamlessly into its owner's routine. This speaks to the lamp's essential role and the resourcefulness of those who relied upon it. The persistent soot around both nozzles, a dark trace on the red-orange slip, offers undeniable confirmation that both wicks were regularly lit, day after day, consuming oil and casting their steady light. This consistent evidence of burning, coupled with the physical handling, from the smoothed areas on the base where it rested to the worn spots on the upper surface where fingers repeatedly gripped it, all combined to show a lamp that served its purpose diligently, without fail. It was not discarded for its imperfections or minor damage, but continued to provide its quiet, steady glow, a testament to its enduring utility for countless hours after sunset, a constant companion in the Roman night. This lamp, now resting with its mold-made form, its subtle maker's mark, its simple decoration, and its undeniable signs of handling and flame, embodies a profound practical truth. It was not a luxury item, but a common necessity, crafted by an artisan in Naucratis for a specific purpose within a Roman home. An ordinary Roman then purchased or acquired it, bringing it into their daily life. They used it, refilled it with oil, and trimmed its wick through countless evenings, relying on its steady, comforting glow to extend their days. The wear and tear visible on its surface are not flaws, but rather a rich, quiet record of its story. They are a testament to the many hands that held it, the eyes that saw by its light, and the tasks completed under its humble illumination. This lamp connects the maker, the object, and the user across centuries, forming a tangible, humble bridge of daily necessity and human ingenuity. The lamp now rests, its quiet glow a distant memory, a gentle echo of past lives. This small terracotta lamp, with its mold-made form and subtle maker's mark, was not a luxury but a common, portable object. It fit easily in one hand, a familiar weight for its Roman owner, the soot around its nozzle, a dark trace on the red-orange clay, confirmed its constant use. This was an object that needed regular refilling with oil and its wick trimmed or replaced to maintain a steady flame. These small, consistent acts of maintenance were part of its daily life, allowing it to brighten countless evenings. The wear on its base and upper surface showed the many times it was set down and picked up, a quiet record of its essential role. It allowed tasks like mending or preparing for rest to continue after the sun had set, pushing back the encroaching darkness with its humble, steady glow. This lamp, a tangible link across centuries, now becomes a distant point of light, its story fading as we turn our attention south, where another evening unfolds. The quiet hum of its flame, a constant presence, now gives way to the sounds of a different night. The final stitch holds. She folds the tunic and lays it beyond the lamp's light, clearing the small workspace. Darkness still fills most of the room, but it no longer matters. The one task that required precision is complete. She checks the cloth once with her thumb and lets her hands rest. The seam holds under the pressure. Her hands stay where they came to rest, on the folded cloth, and she does not pick anything else up. The lamp goes on burning at the same height it has held for the last hour, unattended now that nothing needs seeing. Before settling, she gives the lamp the same brief attention it requires on ordinary evenings. Oil must be replenished, and a wick trimmed or replaced from time to time. Those modest acts of maintenance explain the soot at a used nozzle and the wear of repeated handling. Nothing about the object is grand, and that is precisely why it was useful. Grand objects get put away. This one sits on a table in reach of whoever is working, gets oil when it runs low, gets a trimmed wick when it smokes, and gets carried from one room to another without anyone being careful about it. Usefulness of that kind is hard on an object and easy on a household. She carries the palm-sized lamp to its last position for the evening, a common portable object, and sets it down. Its light has extended the day by a single mended seam. With that practical result achieved, the Roman room can grow quiet. Quiet arrives in the order it usually does. The hands stop first, then the small sounds of cloth and needle, then the attention. The flame is the last thing still working, and it is working on nothing in particular now. The repaired tunic lies folded beyond the light. A faint wick crackle remains while the woman settles the lamp on a stable surface. Its work was small and complete. One reservoir of oil extended the evening long enough for one seam. The room is ready to become dark again whenever she chooses. She does not choose yet. The lamp is left alight a little past its purpose, which is a thing people do with a small flame at the end of an evening for no reason they would give if asked. The light holds its place on the table and waits to be finished with. The Roman lamp becomes a distant point of light. Farther south, beside the Nile at Kulubnarti, another small lamp glows inside a mud brick home. A resident pulls a woven palm mat closer and settles for the evening. The thick walls still hold the day's warmth against the cooling air. She takes a slow breath as the village quiet deepens around her. The air coming through the doorway is cooler than the air near the wall, and she can feel the difference without moving. Outside, the last of the day's sounds have thinned to the ones that carry. A voice a long way off, something shifting in a pen. the river doing what it does all night. She shifts on the palm mat, letting the day's tasks end in this late 12th century evening. Kulubnarti, part of the medieval Nubian kingdom of Mercuria, settled into its night. She keeps the saucer lamp within reach, leaving any remaining work for morning. There is remaining work. There always is, and none of it improves by being done in the dark. The saucer lamp sits where her hand will find it without looking, and everything she has decided not to do tonight stays exactly where she left it. The day's food and field work are finished. She leans against mud brick that still releases a little stored warmth, then shifts the saucer lamp away from the edge of the mat. The room asks for no further decision tonight. That is a particular kind of relief, and it arrives late in an evening rather than early. Nothing is unfinished in a way that will matter by morning. Nothing needs moving, sealing, banking, or checking. The room has reached the state it stays in until light. Far off, a bull-turned Sakia water wheel gives one slow creak as it draws Nile water toward the fields. Dates, figs, pulses, onions, cucumbers, and other crops depended on that daytime work. Now the mechanism is distant enough to become part of the night, rather than another task. Sounds change category at this hour. The same noise that would have had her on her feet at midday is now simply the noise the village makes, and it passes through the room without asking anything of her at all. Beyond the mud brick wall, a donkey calls and a dog answers. Inside, the warm, earthy scent of sorghum flatbread and stew still lingers from the meal. Those ordinary sounds and aromas are enough to locate the household without turning the night into an inventory. She knows where everything is without counting it. The pot is by the wall, the lamp is within reach, the mat is where it always is, and the doorway is a paler shape in a dark wall. That is the whole inventory, and it is held without effort. She shifts once on the woven mat. Outside, a donkey calls and a dog answers from farther away. The sounds leave wide spaces between them, marking the village without requiring her attention. A few small lights, spaced the way the houses are spaced, none of them doing anything. She can see them from where she is sitting if she turns her head, and there is no reason to turn her head. The village is where it was. The world beyond her walls settles. She rests one shoulder against the mud brick and feels heat stored from daylight return slowly to the cooling room. The woven mat and thick wall provide everything needed for this particular night. Not every night, this one. The wall gives back the day's heat slowly enough to last until morning. The mat lifts her off the cooler floor, and between the two there is nothing else the night is asking for. Her palm crosses the smooth mud brick beside her. Above, a small high window is now only a dark rectangle. Earlier it admitted air and a narrow measure of light. At this hour it simply shows that the room is warmer and brighter than the night outside. By a small margin in both cases. The difference between inside and outside is not dramatic here. It is a few degrees and one low flame, held steady by a thick wall and a small quantity of oil. It is enough to make the inside of the room the obvious place to be. The saucer lamp holds oil at its center and feeds a simple wick. Its light covers the mat, one low surface, and the nearest wall. Nothing more needs to be seen. She checks the flame once and lets her hand fall back to her lap. It is burning low and even, the way it does when the wick has been trimmed and the oil has settled. There is nothing to correct. Her hand comes back down and stays down, and the flame goes on doing the only thing it was lit to do. Boats are tied, market work is finished, and the paths between homes carry fewer feet. A final voice passes outside and is gone. The Nile village remains present in small sounds, but none of them asks this household to begin again. The sounds continue without her. Something moves in the lane and stops. The river goes on. None of it is addressed to this room, and the room has already closed for the night in every way that matters except the flame. Her hands become still, fed, warm, and finished with the day's small tasks. She listens as the last village sounds separate into longer stretches of silence. The lamp burns lower beside the mat. This household evening has reached its quiet result. Beyond the wall, one last animal call fades before another arrives. Boats, fields, and trade can wait for daylight. Inside, the lamp has nearly reached the end of its wick, and the resident no longer follows the sounds. Instead, her awareness drifts past the mud brick walls, out to where Kulubnarti rests, a seasonal island among the scattered rocks of the Second Nile Cataract. The late 12th century village stretches along a narrow green strip of cultivation, a ribbon of life against the rugged landscape. Houses, some one story, some two, are built of mud brick and stone, their uneven lines softened by the approaching night. The air, though still, carries the faint, earthy scent of the Nile. The village, nestled against the rocky landscape, feels like a quiet haven. Its structures a testament to enduring life by the river. Each mud brick wall, whether part of a humble single-story dwelling or a more substantial two-story home, has absorbed the day's sun, holding its warmth deep within. Now, as the evening air cools, that stored heat slowly radiates back into the rooms, making the homes a comfortable refuge. This gentle warmth is a welcome comfort after the day's labors, a natural embrace against the chill of the night. The small, high windows, barely visible as darkness deepens, are not designed for grand views but for practical ventilation and to allow a narrow measure of daylight. They keep the interior private and protected, yet connected to the shifting light of the sky. The village, a collection of these simple, enduring structures, feels rooted to its place, a quiet witness to countless evenings unfolding in the same steady rhythm. Every element, from the river that sustains it to the mud brick that shelters, serves a clear purpose in the daily life of its inhabitants, offering both comfort and a quiet sense of continuity. The thick walls offer a silent promise of rest. The village settles into its nightly calm, but the river itself remains a quiet artery of life, a constant, murmuring presence. Even as darkness deepens, the Nile continues its slow, steady flow, a timeless rhythm that shapes every day and evening here. Along its banks, small wooden boats are gently moored, their simple hulls laden with the day's transport of grain and dates. They wait patiently for the morning light, ready to continue their journeys to other nearby settlements, connecting communities along the river's path. Further out on the water, a solitary fisherman might still be tending his nets, or patiently casting a line for the Nile perch or bolty fish that are so vital to the local diet. His movements are practiced and silent, a quiet dance against the river's gentle current. The water, dark and reflective, holds the promise of sustenance and connection, a silent highway for goods and a source of daily food, flowing ever onward through the night. These small wooden boats, carrying their simple cargoes of grain and dates, weave together the communities along the Nile, forming a network of quiet connection. They represent the steady pulse of local trade, linking Kulubnarti to its neighbors without grand journeys or distant markets, a testament to self-reliance. The fish, caught with nets, hooks, and lines, are not just food but a vital, consistent part of the evening meal, a quiet gift from the river that sustains families day after day. The river's gentle lapping against the shore is a constant lullaby, a soothing sound that reinforces the quiet, self-sufficient life that unfolds here, far from the clamor of larger cities. The river, in its steady flow, brings and takes, connecting life along its banks, a silent partner in the daily rhythms of the village. It is a lifeline, providing both sustenance and a gentle, enduring connection to the wider world of the Nile Valley, all settling into the quiet of the night. Away from the river's edge, within the village heart, the day's exchanges have concluded. Here, commerce is direct, coinage is not accepted. Instead, goods are exchanged through trust and mutual need, a system deeply woven into daily life. Earlier today, a woman might have carefully felt the texture of a new piece of wool clothing, its fibers soft and warm, perhaps offering a basket of freshly picked dates in return. Nearby, a craftsman could have quietly displayed his work, sturdy saddle tack, meticulously crafted from local leather, or a collection of essential tools. Among these, you might have seen sharp awls for leatherwork, small weights for measuring grain, or spindle whorls, ready for spinning new threads. Simple sandals, crafted from local materials, might have been traded for a measure of grain, ensuring a family's bread for the coming days. Each transaction was quiet, unhurried, securing what was needed for the evening ahead and for the tasks of tomorrow. This simple trading ensured everyone had what they needed, fostering a deep sense of community reliance. The wool clothing, carefully woven by local hands, provided essential warmth against the cooler night air, a practical exchange for the sweet, nourishing dates harvested from nearby fields. A craftsman's tools, perhaps an awl for mending leather or small weights for precise measurements, found immediate purpose in another household, traded for the grain that would become tomorrow's flatbread. These exchanges, built on understanding the direct utility and tangible worth of goods, formed the very rhythm of Kulubnarti's economy. There was no abstract value of coins, only the clear, visible worth of what was made and grown within the village and its surrounding lands. Each item, from sturdy saddle tack to simple, durable sandals, supported the community, allowing the necessary tasks of life to continue, sustained by local skills and produce. This gentle rhythm of exchange now settles into the quiet evening, a soft hum of self-sufficiency. As the market quieted, your path might have led past the small mud brick church, a modest structure built directly from the earth itself. Its walls, a warm earthy tone, blend with the landscape, a testament to the materials readily available. You pause for a moment, noticing its simple, unadorned entrance, a quiet invitation. Catching a glimpse of the interior, you see the space divides into 3 aisles, a common and functional design, leading your eye towards a decorated apse at the far end. Though empty now in the fading light of evening, a soft hush fills the air. Faint inscriptions are visible on its inner walls, perhaps on a smooth column or etched into the plaster. These are not grand pronouncements, but quiet marks, names or short prayers, scrawled in Greek, Coptic, and Old Nubian. They are the personal traces of ordinary people, leaving a quiet record of their presence and their thoughts. These quiet inscriptions, etched into the mud brick and plaster, offer a glimpse into the lives and languages of Kulubnarti. Here, a Greek name is faintly visible, perhaps beside a Coptic prayer, or a short, earnest phrase in Old Nubian. They represent the diverse linguistic threads woven into this small Nubian kingdom, reflecting a community connected to wider traditions yet rooted in its own identity. These simple marks speak of individual moments of reflection, a personal connection to the sacred within the familiar, comforting walls of their community church. The church, in its very simplicity, served as a gathering place where villagers could leave their personal imprints, a quiet dialogue across time. As you move on from the threshold, the faint traces of these ancient voices linger in the air, a gentle reminder of the many lives lived and prayers whispered within these humble walls, now settling into the quiet of the evening. Leaving the church behind, she turns toward home as the air cools above the river. The fields carry the earthy scent of a day spent in sun and water. Beside the path, the sakya wheels have stopped, and the bulls that turned them stand at rest. Water drawn from the Nile has reached the village plots, where dates, figs, pulses, onions, and cucumbers grow. None of that work needs her attention now. Nearer the house, sorghum bread warms on a hot plate, while a pot of stew gives off a familiar savory smell. The meal is ordinary and welcome after the day's tasks. She crosses the last stretch of packed earth, passes through the doorway, and lets the thicker mud brick walls replace the open evening air. A bowl and a small jug have already been set out. Their positions are familiar, leaving a clear place near the wall for the bread and the pot when they are brought in. A round of sorghum flatbread sits beside the stew, ready to tear into smaller pieces. There may be pulses in the pot, a little fish from the river, or a bowl of fermented sorghum porridge nearby. Sorghum or millet beer accompanies the food, The meal follows the same practical logic as the fields, boats, and workshops outside. Local ingredients, patient preparation, and little waste. She eats without hurry, while the room loses the last of its daylight. The bowls grow lighter, the bread disappears, and conversation becomes less frequent. When the meal is finished, the vessels are moved aside, and the floor around the sleeping place is cleared. What remains is the smell of warm bread and stew, already thinning in the cooler air. She rinses her fingers with a little water, dries them on the edge of a cloth, and sets the cup beside the other vessels. No further preparation is needed for the meal. With the meal cleared away, she prepares the room for night. The mud brick walls absorbed heat during the day and release it slowly as the temperature falls. In warmer weather, a palm mat outside may be enough. Tonight, the sheltered corner indoors is more comfortable. She smooths the mat and checks the rope-lashed bed beside it, choosing the place that needs the least adjustment. A small window holds a narrow strip of fading sky. Below it, the saucer lamp waits with oil in its central reservoir and room for 3 wicks. She moves the lamp within easy reach, folds one edge of the mat, and sits down. The day's work has narrowed to these few movements, each familiar enough to require almost no thought. A folded covering rests near the bed if the air turns colder. She tests the rope once with her palm, hears no loose movement, and leaves it as it is. She lights the wicks with a practiced hand. Their flames illuminate a small part of the room, the woven mat, the lower wall, and the vessels set aside after the meal. The rest remains in shadow. Nothing more is asked of the lamp, and its limited reach suits the hour. Warmth lingers in the wall against her shoulder as she settles into place. Beyond the window, separate village sounds become harder to distinguish. A call from an animal, movement near a doorway, and water beyond the houses arrive more softly than they did earlier. She adjusts the mat once, rests her hands, and watches the nearest flame become steady. The room is prepared, the food is finished, and every useful object has returned to its place. A faint reflection moves along the rim of the lamp when one wick leans, then steadies with it. The other 2 flames remain low and even, giving the room no more light than it needs. Outside, the cultivated strip beside the Nile lies unattended until morning. Boats that carried grain and dates are tied near the bank. Fishing nets, hooks, and lines have been put away, while the tools used for baskets, sandals, wool clothing, and tack remain where their owners left them. These things do not form a grand picture from inside the room. They are only the familiar work of neighbours, now paused. The resident hears less of it with each passing minute. Her attention stays with the mat beneath her, the warmth of the wall, and the lamp's small pool of light. Farther sounds merge with the river and the air moving around the houses. No task calls her back outside. The boat ropes, stored tools, and covered baskets can remain untouched until people return to them after daylight. From the mat, even the nearest doorway has become only a darker shape. The 3 small flames continue to burn beside the mat. Their light touches the nearest wall and leaves the upper room dim. A trace of the evening meal remains, mixed with the dry smell of earth and woven palm. Animal calls beyond the house grow infrequent, then indistinct. She no longer separates one sound from another. The island, the fields, and the river continue beyond the window, but none requires watching. Her hands stay still, and her breathing finds an even pace. When one wick shortens, the room changes only slightly. The light is lower, the wall is still warm, and the place she prepared has become enough for the rest of the night. The lamp's reservoir holds what remains of the oil. She does not reach for it again. The smallest flame continues beside her, while the 2 larger ones settle closer to their wicks. She draws the mat closer to the wall and smooths one folded edge. The room retains enough warmth for the night, and the final adjustment makes this familiar corner her place to rest. It is the same corner as last night and the night before, and the adjustment is the same one. The mat straightened by a hand's width, the lamp moved slightly out of the path of a sleeping arm. Small, repeated, and the last decision of the day. The evening meal has been cleared, though a trace of sorghum bread and stew remains in the air. She moves the saucer lamp within easy reach and checks the floor around it. Its modest flame is all the room asks of it now. Not light to work by, not light to move by, just enough for the room to have a center while she settles. And the oil left in the saucer is roughly the amount that will burn out on its own before morning without anyone attending to it. Her hands become still, fed, warm, and finished with the day's small tasks. She listens as the last village sounds separate into longer stretches of silence. The lamp burns lower beside the mat. Nothing new begins. This household evening has reached its quiet result. The result is undramatic and complete. Food eaten, work set aside, lamp trimmed, mat straightened, household accounted for. Nothing has been resolved that was troubling anyone, and nothing needed to be. The evening has simply finished the way it was always going to finish. Beyond the wall, one last animal call fades into the growing silence. Boats, fields, and trade can wait for daylight. Inside, the lamp has nearly reached the end of its wick, and the resident no longer follows the sounds. They continue, and they pass. The flame is lower than it was an hour ago, and lower again than that. What light remains reaches the nearest wall and stops well short of the doorway, and nothing in the room moves except the flame. High in the Pamirs, the stone rings are pale beneath the open sky. A thin line of smoke rises from the wooden brazier and loosens in the cold air. Dark wood, warmed stone, and the edge of a woolen sleeve remain for a moment, then soften. The mountain path grows faint. The smoke becomes harder to follow, leaving only a little warmth among the stones and the broad quiet of the terrace. Black and white boundary stones lose their contrast as the light falls. The nearest mound stays visible a little longer than the path, its low curve resting against the larger shape of the mountain. In the Egyptian workshop, the heavier sounds have ended. A quern rests beside scattered grain, shaped loaves wait in a basket, and sealed jugs stand near the wall. Heat remains around the black ovens, though no new batch has begun. The guard sits near the doorway while the rooms settle. Flour dust, warm bread, and the faint tang of fermentation linger, then gradually lose their edges in the dim workshop. A wooden tub stands where the last dough was worked. Nearby, the poker has been laid beside the oven, and the pestle is no longer moving. The separate rooms become one dark, warm interior. A Roman lamp holds a modest circle of light. The mended cloth has been folded and set beyond it. Soot darkens the nozzle. Oil rests beneath the opening, and the worn handle lies easily in the hand. Farther along the Nile, another small lamp glows beside a palm mat in a mud brick room. The two pools of light remain separate and steady, each surrounded by more shadow than before. On one table, the folded cloth keeps its shape. In the other room, an empty bowl and the edge of the woven mat catch the light. Neither flame reaches the doorway, and the walls beyond them remain dim. The river is barely visible beyond Kulubnarti's houses. A tide boat moves a little at the bank, then becomes still again. Inside, the wall releases the last warmth of the day. The meal has been cleared, the mat is smooth, and the lamp burns lower. Distant sounds no longer arrive as separate events. They blend with water, air, and the broad darkness around the village. The tide boat rests against its rope. A small movement on the water reaches the bank and disappears. Within the house, the lamp shows less of the wall than it did before, while the resident remains still beside it. Only the ember remains in view. Its center is dull red, with a narrow edge of amber where the wood has not yet darkened. A faint change of light passes across the ash. Nothing else enters the frame. The mountain smoke, the workshop, and the two small lamps have receded, leaving this single point of warmth against the dark. A thin grey edge curls inward where the ember meets the ash. For several moments the colour holds, neither brightening nor disappearing. The fire gives no sudden spark. Its surface changes by degrees too small to follow. The ember settles further into the ash. Red becomes amber, then a softer shade at the center. The surrounding darkness stays unchanged. A final thread of warmth remains along the wood, steady and small, while every other shape has faded from view. Ash gathers along the lower edge and covers part of the remaining color. What can still be seen is no larger than a narrow line. It rests there without movement, held between the darkened wood and the deeper shadow beyond it. The line softens until only the center carries a trace of amber. The last amber line dims beneath a thin skin of ash. Its color remains for a few quiet breaths, smaller each time it is noticed. Then the wood holds only a muted warmth, resting in the dark while the room around it stays completely still. Nothing follows it. The last of the amber goes without any particular moment, and the dark that takes its place is the ordinary dark of a room at night, undisturbed, holding its warmth against a thick wall until morning.